Okay, so the headlines this morning are pretty much as you would expect. On the slide, more Welsh woe leaves Ireland facing third seed billing for Euro 2020 draw. I mean, we're going to watch the Euros happen in Dublin and we're not going to have a game. It's going to be ridiculous. It'll be like, who could it be? It could be Wales in Dublin. Could it? Do the Welsh have games? Well, no, it'll be Wales in Dublin taking over the city, sacking Dublin against, I don't know.
Gibraltar. Gibraltar could qualify for the Euros because they've done so well in League D. I think they're 3 points away from actually getting promoted and therefore being 3 points away from actually getting into the playoffs. And could be in a situation where they're playing in our backyard in a European Championships that we're not involved in. Speaking of the Welsh fans taking over the city, I saw them yesterday, speaking of expensive pints, drinking down in Temple Bar, kind of being kind of like the Football Lads Alliance, singing brash songs in Temple Bar. Well, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to tell them that you could get a much cheaper pint just up the road. I'm going to let them spend their money ridiculously, and then all of a sudden it's 9:30 and they're singing "You're just a shit Northern Ireland" in the Aviva Stadium. That's karma for you.
Yeah, for them. Or for us.
For us.
So, Killarney Golf Club, there's a good story, an interesting story in the Examiner about it. Internal documents reveal friction between Killarney Management Group and the GM. So, the internal golf course politics generally not that interesting, but the Examiner managed to make that interesting today. And don't let him. Leo Cullen's challenges to keep players focused after the whitewash of Wasps. This has happened before. I remember a couple of years ago, Leinster went to Northampton and got an away win with a bonus point,
yeah.
And then lost at the Aviva.
Yeah, and that was
the last days of Matt O'Connor, was it?
It would have been. But that game was actually mentioned ad nauseum. Was it either last season?
Yeah.
The season before, as a
Can't do that.
lesson that must have been learned. And Leinster clearly learned that lesson last year. I don't know if those lessons are still required. Look, we talked about Leinster last week on the show on Friday night when we had the Wasps game live. The difference between Leinster now and say the Leinster that were beaten by London Irish in their first match after winning the Heineken Cup in 2009 is that, you could always pick maybe 12 to 13 of Michael Cheika's starting 15 when everyone was fit. Now you could easily throw 7, 8, 10 names into a hat for various positions.
Rhys Ruddock's not in the team and then starts because of injury and is like, well, you might be right in the match.
We liken them to the Dublin footballers because you know that if you play for Jim Gavin and you play badly for 10 minutes, you actually probably lose your place for the next game, and that's what's happening with Leinster.
I actually think it's more competitive now in Leinster than it is in the Dubs, because I still think in the Dubs there's it's 3 or 4 players who are like that, but the vast swathe from goalkeeper to the full forward line, exactly. You can name 12 of that Dubs team, I think, week in, week out.
That's because they keep playing well, knowing that they're going to lose their place.
O'Neill looks down and out. The Indo pretty certain that this is the end of days. So Dan McDonald says, winter discontent looms after Ireland falls short again. David Kelly, harsh Welsh lesson shows endgame is approaching. And Vincent Hogan, 3 strikers but no goals and no hope for ghost of a team. It's the absence of hope that kills you, as opposed to actually having any hope that kills you. Haley's Kerry roots driving his Irish desire. This is the Munster fullback, eager to build on first invite to Ireland camp. So decent game last week, but no real opportunity against Exeter for Haley to show exactly what he's about. But apparently Mike Haley is settling in well. His granny's from Kerry.
Yeah, from Phoenix. He says he was out on a boat one day in his piece with Cian Tracy there, and there was a massive shark warning. I'm not sure, was it a massive warning for a shark or a warning about a massive shark? But anyway,
a massive basking shark.
Yeah, okay. And so there was one of those in the water, and he says he got to hell out of Tralee Bay very, very quickly and has never been back in the water there since. So he needs to get back in that boat because I don't think sharks are a regular occurrence. But yeah, I thought he was very good last week. It's not exactly... wasn't exactly the game for a fullback, Sandy Park last Saturday, to be quite honest, considering the wind. It was like a tornado. So I expect more from Mike Kelly over the next couple of weeks, but I was quietly impressed with his performance.
They're all fairly similarly built, himself and Conway and Earls,
stocky.
And they're not the prototype 6'6" guys that you're seeing the way the game has developed in recent years. So it'll be really interesting to see the 3 of them together. I just think that they could be very creative as a trio.
Yeah, and they now have the kind of fulcrum to trigger that creativity in a 10 and Joey Carberry, and they still have no Tauta, they still have no Chris Farrell. I think once they get their guys back, they'll have real competition in the back line because they already have a pack that can take on most packs in the competition.
The referees obviously had a symposium in Croke Park yesterday, the GAA referees, and Conor Lane has been talking about it, about the new rules. We'll have to embrace it. Like every year, there's always something new for us. It'll be a big challenge, no doubt, but we'll embrace it. It will be tough like everything. We want to go out to get every decision right, which is a downfall we have, but we look forward to them and we'll embrace whatever comes in. So it's like, this isn't going to be easy, lads. The new rules he's talking about for the league.
There's definitely an element of fatalism about being an inter-county GAA referee. That, like, you're there, it's the biggest day of your career when you're refereeing an All-Ireland final, like Conor Lane got one a couple of years ago. You throw the ball up and you're like, right, I know, something is going to go badly, badly wrong over the next 70 minutes. There's no way it doesn't. It's an impossible game to referee. And it's like, it's something else knowing you're in that situation where, on the one hand, it's a huge opportunity for you, but on the other hand, you know that you're going to get something badly wrong.
Yeah. Headstrong, Stokes and England aim to rise above Sri Lanka corruption crisis. So he's heading a ball, but it's obviously a cricketer. So that's your Sri Lanka corruption, England fix story. I know you were hanging out for that.
All over that
this morning, Dave. The Irish Times, O'Neill finds positives amid our goalless gloom. He did say there were some positives to take from the game yesterday. Anyone? Bueller? Anyone?
2 goals from our last 5 competitive games.
2 goals conceded.
2 goals scored. And we lost both of those games.
We got accused of being too negative on the show yesterday, so I jotted down all the positives as I went along yesterday evening when I was watching the game. I'll get to them later on, but there was a few.
Marked out of 10, 8 for James McLean. 8 out of 10? Was it an 8 out of 10 performance? 7 out of 10 for Cyrus, 7 out of 10 for Matt Doherty. No 4s, no 3s. This ain't L'Equipe doing the...
None of them really stunk the joint out, though. You see, this is the problem. The level of expectation we have of these players is now so low that if they merely turn up and give everything they have physically to the game, they're going to get a 6 to 7 to 8 out
I
of
didn't
10.
look up the German newspaper rankings after the Dutch hockey them during the week, but I'd like to have seen were they all getting 5s, 6s, 7s and 8s.
But the thing,
I suspect they weren't.
James McLean 8 is a Kylian Mbappe 3. So I think that's the sort of gauge we have to do. Just think, what would this be in normal terms? Just subtract 5 from any of those.
There should be a FIFA handicapping system. So it's like he's actually getting this 8 out of 10 out of 50. So, you know, at his absolute peak, he's a 5 out of 10.
But look at the James McLean expectation levels. 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when we were clamouring for him to be in the Ireland team, we would have given him
6.
a 7 or 8 out of performance for maybe beating 3 or 4 defenders, getting past his fullback several times, getting 3 or 4 decent crosses into the penalty area, as well as the 3 or 4, you know, crashing challenges he always gives us, and the effort and the endeavour that he always gives us. Now we're just happy with the endeavour. There is no marks for James McLean for beating defenders and creating openings.
Yeah.
We've reassessed our expectations of every single one of these players, and for that reason it's much easier to get a 7 or an 8 now than it was 5 years ago.
Yeah, downwards. Showboating, do it when the medals are at home. This is Gordon Darcy's advice after the incident at the weekend. Baxi Medard, though, in fairness, like, he's 600 years old and he's still doing it. Well, he's been around for a long time, Dave. That's my point.
He's all his experience there. I think he's won top 14 medals with 3 different clubs over the last 10 years. It's amazing given his durability, given the league that he's had to play in. He just saw an opening and thought, look, I won't give up on this.
Are they the best mutton chops in world sport?
Who?
Maxime Medard?
Yeah, they're pretty good.
There's no one else.
Sideburns are pretty good. I can't think of anybody else at the moment.
His are definitely, I think, the best. They've the most lush. They've got longevity, even as the rest of his hair manages to maintain its lustrous shine at this stage. I'm impressed. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's old school. Freddie Burns is going to become, like, if Bath somehow get out of this pool, this is suddenly the best scenario for Freddie Burns. He's like, I've come back from the brink of being in an awful situation after I should have won that game against Toulouse, and yet here we are still succeeding. He becomes a superstar. Like,
they're out though. Essentially, they're out.
Yeah, well,
you lose your first game at home, you're pretty much out of the competition.
It's going to be a huge task, to be fair. But
Toulouse aren't great, are they?
No, they're not. But they have to take on Wasps as well. They still have 3 home games.
Yeah.
Or 3 away games out of their next 5.
Also, I'm sorry, but Leinster are in the division, so it doesn't really matter.
And Bath are poor. Like, they're way down the rankings in the top in the Gallagher Premiership at the moment, and they are not a side that's going to go away from home, pick up points against anybody, bar maybe Wasps.
What's the name of the Premiership, Dave?
Gallagher.
What's the name of it?
Well, look,
come on.
I don't call Jamie Carragher Jamie Carragher, do I?
Well, I'm sorry, but come on. We invented the name Gallagher. It's Gallagher.
That's not the way it works.
You can't have a spit in your mouth just because England has decided they can't say their own name.
That's not the way it works. The Gallagher who is running this company that is now sponsoring the Premiership pronounces the name Gallagher.
And he's wrong. He's got his own name wrong.
That is fair enough for me.
Right, okay, so crowd boos were for the ref, says Martin O'Neill. That's, no, it wasn't me. That's definitely not me they're booing. Manager insists he will absolutely remain in the job. Of course he's going to remain in the job. We haven't got the money to sack him.
Well, the Independent today in particular they're the most strident in their opinion that the end is nigh. And I'm not sure that they know something that we don't know. But I would be astonished if he is not leading us into the qualification campaign for the Euros.
Yeah, so would I. Like, there's just no way. What is it, €3 million that we need to throw away at this? Plus, you add on to that whatever you're going to have to pay a new manager to come in. The thing is, we do have a full stop at the end of the 2020 campaign. There is no conceivable way that they last beyond that. So in a weird way, I agree with you that I can't see them going before the Euro 2020, but I can't see them lasting afterwards because there's no way they're going to be able to justify as big a contract as that again.
Oh, no.
And the results probably won't justify them anyway.
So, like, the definition of the end game could be like we are now at the end of the beginning of the sacking period, and it's like they're officially in sacking season, and as soon as we're out of contention for qualifying for the Euros, you just sack them and you put in Noel King for the rest of that competition, so you're really just paying the money anyway.
But you're enduring another zombie campaign, as Miguel Delaney termed it a couple of months ago.
But here's the issue, right? By not having a recognised, credible candidate within the organisation as a successor, you don't have the opportunity to go, look, you're already under contract as our under-21s manager. We're not going to give you any more money up front, but if we qualify, we'll give you £1 million to whoever that might be, a figure who's gone through their coaching badges. Instead, they have like a recognised permanent under-21 manager and similar managers at the underage level who are not candidates for the international job. This is exactly why England had Southgate ready to go. For when Big Sam was drinking his pint of wine and blabbing off, it was like, oh, look, we can just shuffle you aside and we'll give him a little bit of extra money. We don't have that. We don't have that forward thinking or that planning or that succession planning.
And that forward thinking is so bloody important at the moment. Like, on a serious note, the whole idea of apathy being worse than anger is so true in this situation, that if that manages to seep into the managerial crop over the next campaign, we're in massive trouble. Like, you look at that under-19s result last night, beating the Netherlands 2-1. Like, there are top quality players available to be moulded into top quality players over the next couple of years. Of course, that depends on where they go with their club. The club career defines how good a footballer you will become. You look at that Wales team last night, and they've got an under-19 crop that are clearly incredibly talented and are able to do it at a very early level at senior internationals, and Ireland should be able to replicate that in the next 5 years. The problem is, though, if you've got two managers in there, or a manager and an assistant in there, who are like, well, our contract is definitely up after this campaign, where's the initiative for them to bring those players through? Where's the initiative for them to really think about the future?
Well, to qualify, like, you know,
we would have to be very lucky again, but I would say we got incredibly lucky with our World Cup qualifying group last time.
You can
like
rescue the
Serbia,
situation.
Wales, and Austria. That was as easy a group as you could possibly hope for in qualification. Will lightning strike twice? Well, maybe it does. Martin O'Neill is quite a lucky manager.
The German rankings out of 10 from DW, their international broadcaster, Neuer 4, Ginter 7.
Is this last night or the Dutch game?
The Dutch game. Boateng 3, Hummels 4, Hector 4, Kimmich 5, Emre Can 5, Toni Kroos 6, Thomas Müller 5, Mark Uth 6, Timo Werner 5. So that's 3s, 4s and 5s, 1-7. That's kind of more like it. I'd like to see some 3s.
We don't tend to do that to our own.
We don't.
Not as ruthless in the press as maybe the Germans are.
We might have to see them. We might bump into them in the coffee shop.
I'd like to see what they were. They'd be a bit higher last night. They were a bit better last night than they were against the Netherlands.
Maybe. Who, the Dutch or the Germans?
The Germans,
Didn't they?
Were beaten again.
Oh, it was 1-0 at half-time, they were up.
Yeah.
Griezmann
2 goals.
Dave was there.
Ah, right. That was quick. Mourinho hit with FA charge for doing the, somebody's got a tiny little Donald Trump thing going on with the little, what's that? That's what he was doing to the camera, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And he was addressing Donald Trump as well.
Who's horseface in this? Anyway, Donegal bring in Rochford. We haven't even mentioned this, right? Ulster champions Donegal have pulled off a coup by adding the former Mayo manager Stephen Rochford to the backroom team. Rochford left Mayo in August, citing a lack of support from officials, and has wasted little time returning to the sideline. It's understood he's going to be Declan Bonner's right-hand man. So Carl Lacey obviously had been part of the backroom team last year. So even had a year out? Did he retire and go straight in, or had he
Straight
1
in,
year out?
wasn't
He went straight in.
Yeah.
He played so little football in the years prior to that, because of the injuries. But
he's got a very young family, Carl Lacey, so as I said, family commitments were the reason that he stepped away. So
as does Stephen Rochford.
But we were chatting about this off air and kind of going, so Rochford would have been known more as the manager because he had a brilliant coaching team, right? At Mayo last year, he had...
McEntee obviously did a huge amount of the coaching.
Yeah.
Donny Buckley with him.
Was that last year as well?
Yeah, Tommy was just looking at it before, because I couldn't recall whether or not Buckley was involved with him last year, and he was.
So is Buckley more of a physical trainer slash coach as well as coach, or is he...
Physical trainer.
Pure physical?
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, we've actually heard not that much about Donny Buckley from players that have worked with him over the last couple of years. He's so highly thought of that you'd imagine he's got his finger in a pie when it comes to other elements of coaching, but physical trainer is his, strength and conditioning is his bag.
Yeah. Look, from a complete position of ignorance, obviously never having seen him do anything, but I think that it's like game-based physical training as much as anything, so that's the coaching happens while you're doing the physical training, and it's kind of like, the penny dropped for... Anyway... so you would have said Rochford was more of the overseer, the manager, the kind of... And you're...
You know how tough a job that is at the moment. We've seen comments from Kevin McStay recently when he stepped down from the Roscommon job. We would have heard from James Horan when he stepped down as Mayo manager about how difficult it is to try and keep all the balls in the air. Jim McGuinness had to spend so much time trying to raise funds, and you're spending so much time speaking to the 94 members of your backroom team, your phone's never not ringing, and you then have to coach the team, make all the players better players, come up with a game plan, instill that game plan. Managing the team is almost a different job to coaching the team, and I wonder, is that the dynamic that's at play here?
Yeah.
Is Declan Bonner in that role in Donegal thinking, like, I'm just not getting to spend enough time getting down to the nitty-gritty of how I want this Donegal team to play? Who has experience of, managing a huge juggernaut of a county when it comes to all the stuff that goes on off the field, and this guy's just become available? Or is it a Leo Cullen, Stuart Lancaster dynamic, whereby Stephen Rochford is actually going to play an integral role in how Donegal set up play, how these players are coached, and is Declan Bonner taking one for the team in maybe stepping back slightly from certain elements of the Donegal game plan? I would doubt it, given how much progress they made in year one under Bonner.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're a really exciting team when you consider that they were absolutely decimated by injuries. Like, I can see them being the type of team who will benefit massively from a second season, that young coterie of players fully understanding exactly what the system is supposed to be, and I don't know, I think they're a really exciting team to watch.
Yeah.
The transformation from one year to the next was so rapid and so successful that when McBrearty comes back, just seeing there as well, that he's due back in March, so that's enough time for him to be ready for July, June, when the...
Fully ready, yeah. They've got to be targeting an All-Ireland semi-final with that team they have there. They have to be looking to displace Galway and Tyrone from that sort of area of the championship. It's interesting though, I wonder if this is going to set a new precedent when it comes to the top level counties sharing managerial resources. Sharing's not the right word, but you know what I mean, in terms of a manager going to a rival county. Like, I would have thought it would be very unusual, say, for the whole Jim McGuinness rumour to actually materialise, that would have kind of been a watermark moment, or a watershed moment, where Jim McGuinness actually goes and manages Mayo. Like, the idea that the Mayo man's gone in to actually help out Donegal is quite interesting, I think, and the idea that, you do your time at your own county and that's it, you don't really get another inter-county job elsewhere because we're so tribal in the GAA, is that going to come to an end?
I think the other possibility is that Rochford has decided that he wants another crack at the Mayo job down the line and needs to get that experience and needs to stay at the cutting edge, and is actually going to go in and be a coach and kind of beef up his own coaching credentials so that the next time he knows exactly, or can affect better change. I don't know, it's an interesting left field decision by Donegal, and so...
Well, after the league, and certainly after a couple of championship matches, and if there's a press day summer over the course of the summer of 2019, and we're in front of a Donegal player, we're actually be in a position to say, can you just talk us through the dynamic here? Who does what? How does it work? One
last thing for you, I want to bring you the Irish news. It's a great story from Carl O'Kane. He's got an exclusive this morning that Mickey Moran and Eamon Coleman reconciled in advance of Eamon Coleman's death. So obviously there's a book out at the moment about the summer of 1993, it is?
Yeah.
Boys in 93 it's called, when Eamon Coleman was the manager, Mickey Moran was the coach, and Derry won the All-Ireland. The following year, in 1994, obviously they get beaten in an absolute classic by Down in one of the greatest games of football of all time. Down go on to win the All-Ireland, and that winter the Derry County Board remove Eamon Coleman and install Mickey Moran as manager. And in the book, Eamon Coleman's son and a bunch of people say things about Mickey Moran that suggests that there was acrimony at the time, and being polite about that.
Very polite.
Mickey Moran says that there are a lot of, in this piece, it's a statement as opposed to a conversation with Cara Kane. He says that there was lots of inaccuracies in the book, and that obviously there's one side of it. But also in the book, I think Gary Coleman, who is Eamon Coleman's son, says that Mickey Moran came down and phoned him on the night that Eamon Coleman passed, said he wasn't going to be able to make the wake, came down the next week, and they talked for hours, and then they visit the grave of Eamon Coleman. So it seems like peace is actually there now. Some reconciliation has been made with the family, and also Mickey says that he and Eamon Coleman had reconciled, that they'd had a long conversation about what had happened.
Well, it's a remarkable read, because you open up that chapter and Gary Coleman's like, as you say, he calls over to the house the week after the funeral. He's really surprised, but he's really happy to see him, and they make up. Then you keep turning the pages, and it's like the poison being thrown at Mickey Moran is absolutely incredible. And like you say, it is one side of the story, and you feel really sorry for the way Eamon Coleman was treated. And I guess the word backstabbing is used quite a lot in this chapter. He calls Mickey Moran every name under the sun. Like it's actually incredible reading. It's such a good book for anybody who's looking to pick up a copy of it, but it is quite one-sided. Like, I'm surprised to hear Mickey Moran kind of react like that, because I kind of took the whole thing at face value, considering they had sort of made up before he goes on to tell him what actually happened. But I guess the whole thing that really got to him was the fact that, you know, his father was in the States. Eamon was in the States when this was all going down. He, to a certain extent, got completely thrown under the bus by his former comrades in arms when it came to Derry football. And he came back, comes back to the country, and he's not Derry manager anymore. And that's something that really kind of...
And that's obviously just one side of the story.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the side that got printed in the book. So Cara Kane's obviously gone and got a bit of the other side of the story.
Yeah, there was... Like, it's worth going back. I'd love to go back through the newspaper archives around the time, even, that like there was one element where Mickey Moran is addressing the whole team, and he's saying, he's talking about the new regime that Eamon Coleman is going to be not manager anymore, and he says, if anything leaves this room, you're going to be immediately kicked off the panel. And sure enough, the whole thing was printed, I think, the Sunday Tribune that weekend. And so straight away he goes to Gary Coleman, he's like, you leaked the whole thing. And he's like, I had a recorder in the room. He says in the book, I had a recorder in the room. I was recording every word, but I was not the one who put that recording into the newspaper. So somebody else in the Derry camp at the time was not quite happy with Mickey Moran being in that position. It's a fascinating political story about the power struggle in Derry at the time. And it's worth picking up a copy. Like that Gary Coleman chapter is like one of the best chapters you're ever likely to read in a sports book. It is astonishing, and I'm not surprised to see Mickey Moran react with a bit of anger, to be quite honest.
I have to have a read of that book, because I loved that team, and I was obviously following Cavan around in the Ulster Championship in the years after that, and he took the Cavan job, Eamon Coleman, and they loved him in Cavan, and he actually never really got to finish the job with Cavan because he fell ill then. But what a character he was. Yeah. But there were so many characters in that Derry team, and that game you talked about, the Down game, like in some ways that was an All-Ireland semi-final. I'd love to have seen how many All-Irelands, or would they have won a second All-Ireland if Derry had won that match, because there was no standout team in the country at that time. Kerry were nowhere.
Well,
Cork were on
Down
the slide.
was a standout team, really, when you think about it.
Ultimately they proved to be the standout team, given that they won 2 in 4 years.
Derry, I think, won like 3 leagues around that period. Like when the league was, you know, over a long period of time, and you had to be good over a 6-month period, and like never quite fulfilled their potential. They clearly had the players, the defence, and the attacking talent, and obviously the best midfield in the country.
Yeah. And Derry and Down bookended, of course, by great Tyrone and Donegal teams as well, like 1992 All-Ireland champions, 1995 All-Ireland runners-up. The Ulster Championship alone was fascinating in the 90s. Like, I think GA in general, Inter-County level in the 90s. Have we seen a better decade in the 90s? Like, you look at the hurling championship, which was clearly the best hurling championship.
The noughties when Tyrone were the team of the decade was obviously right up there as well.
And look at the Leinster Championship around that, almost that same time.
Ulster Championship, you mean?
What? Kildare, Dublin, Meath and Offaly all winning Leinster titles in successive years.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I know that was sort of replicated in the 2000s when Dublin, Kildare, Meath, Laois and Westmeath all won Leinster titles. But you're right, 90s football and hurling, you can't really beat it.
Nostalgia, nothing like it. Back page, I don't remember a thing about it. Back page of the Herald is gigs up for Irish flops. Defiant O'Neill battling to save his job as Rotten Run continues with loss to Wales. Back page of the Irish Daily Star is Ireland. Dunphy says O'Neill will be under pressure now, and he should be under pressure.
Captain Obvious rides to the rescue to make sure that we're all aware. He's going to be under pressure now, baby.
All my fault, says the back page of the Irish Daily Mail. O'Neill takes the blame as winless run continues, while top GAA ref Owens wants better communication. So he wants the veil of silence to be lifted on match day, with referees to be allowed to explain crucial decisions.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
I really think it's a good idea. Look, either I got it wrong and I made a mistake, and this is what I saw, is fair enough, or like my angle is different from what you're seeing. We completely get like the 5 hours of nonsense that you see in the Sunday game. Like, the refereeing is really an issue. The standard of refereeing is an issue. We probably need professional referees if we're going to actually continue at the level that we're at the moment, but it's never going to happen.
They should be given the choice, I think, if they want to do that themselves. I mean, that is the case with, say, Premier League referees. You see it in US professional sports as well. And I think it would just take the sting out of some of the vitriol the referees have to, if either they'll explain their point of view, or they'll come out and say, do you know what,
or like
I'm after getting that wrong, I didn't have a great angle and I admit I've got it wrong.
Give them access to the tannoy and say, I've sent him off there because he's been at it all game and he's been blackguarding me. You might not have been able to hear it on the mic, but this is what he said. So
like the NFL, when the referee goes into the middle of the field and switches on his mic and tells the stadium why he's given the decision he's just given.
And he still gets booed. Back page of the Mirror is Harry Kane. Ireland booed off after Wilson's winner, but O'Neill insists he is man to lead team until 2020. It's been a costly week in African football for Liverpool. Naby Keita carried off yesterday in Guinea against Rwanda. He was piggybacked, interestingly, off the pitch. There mustn't have been a stretcher available or something. Klopp had complained, of course, about the senseless matches in the international breaks. Of course, Mo Salah went off injured for Egypt on Saturday. The other African story, actually, from last night is Madagascar have qualified for their first ever African Cup of Nations.
Wow.
Good news story.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to all in Madagascar, indeed. Back page of The Sun is the gig's up, Martin. Boo boys have their say. Rochi Moore says Jason Byrne's story there about him going in with Donegal. And Moni Jose, Paul Scholes has launched another attack, another in block caps, on Moner Jose as their bitter war of words erupted again. I haven't actually seen this story. I presume he was doing punditry and...
Oh, he was down in Bray doing a...
Ah, yes, sorry, yes. He was, I'm not quite sure what the event was, but he says, I loved watching his interviews, his cockiness back in the day, but that Jose is gone. Now it's just a moaning Jose, which frustrates you. I feel we could sign Messi and he'd struggle with this team.
Harry Kane, tab of the day, or the gigs up, Martin? They're both pretty good.
They are. I like them both.
Harry Kane wasn't playing in the game.
But it's Harry Arter.
And Harry Wilson.
Harry Wilson, I think.
Yeah, okay, good point. But Harry Arter got thrown under the bus by O'Neill afterwards for going to ground. We told him beforehand, if you're going to ground, you better get the ball. So, I mean, that was obviously a situation that didn't work out very well. It's like, you're picking Harry Kane again? I mean, or Harry Arter again? I mean,
but he does say, you know, this is all my fault. And then he says, you know, Harry Arter.
Except for that bit where
Cyrus Christie really should have scored.
The best story in this morning's newspaper.
There's Keenan Arter after the game last night. There's a... It's not a million miles away from the Mick McCarthy Roy Keane handshake in Lansdowne Road after we beat Holland 1-0, is it?
Only the roles are reversed. Yeah. Harry is Roy and Roy is Mick.
Mick is like kind of trying to bear hug him, and Keane like, get out of my face.
The Republic of Ireland are still pointless in the Nations League.
We are indeed.
Just one more newspaper. West Ham take action. Club suspend coach who went on controversial march. I think he was part of the Democratic Football Lads Alliance. I'd love to go on the beer with the Democratic Football Lads Alliance.
What is just explain?
They just are quite, I don't know, is it fair to say they're quite right-wing, but you could
What's the point of the Democratic Football Lads Alliance?
I actually don't know what the initial sort of basis of it is. It certainly celebrates everyone being English. It celebrates everyone kind of coming together in a moment of pride, celebrating the three lines when they go on tour, and it quite often leads to scenes like we saw in Seville on Monday night.
Are they violent thugs?
There are violent thugs in the group, yes.
They're an alliance of football fans who believe in democracy.
I don't want to tar the Football Lads Alliance with the brush of being lads, but they are football lads, I think. And Sean Ingle with the story of the morning, really. On the trail of snooker's most pressing matter, does Crawley Leisure Centre smell of urine?
I mean, everywhere that there is those little blue loo, what are they called? Blue loos.
The little tablets that are thrown in.
They're supposed to smell of like blue loo, but they ultimately suck up the piss so much that they just smell of piss persistently.
Well, not only if they're not changed regularly.
Maybe Crawley Leisure Centre facing cutbacks.
I think Rick Broadbent in the Times as well has gone on the trail to see if it does smell of piss as well, and he concluded.
Oh, there's two of them. Okay.
Yeah, they've all had the idea, and it's a very good idea. I think it's important journalism.
Before we get to Stephen Hunt, who was obviously on CoCom for us last night, we want to just mark the retirement of Darren O'Sullivan.
Yeah. We're going to have a conversation to market. Is that what's going to happen? Well, I was actually trying to hunt out a commentary of you, Dave, marking that incredible goal that he scored against Limerick in 2011. But unfortunately, the News Talk listen back function doesn't go back to 2011.
Here, you couldn't find
Not
it.
later than that. 2014, I would have thought.
No, 2011.
No.
Yeah.
It was an All-Ireland quarter-final.
Yeah. 2011. 2011 the quarter-final, yeah, and then it's Mayo in the semi-final.
I didn't even think we had the GA live and off the ball in 2011.
All those journalists go to Crawley and sniff piss, and you can't even download a piece of commentary that Dave did from The Office.
But it wasn't
Call
available.
yourself a journalist, buddy.
Well, to be honest with you, once it wasn't online, I was like, I can't be bothered finding this thing.
Certainly, Gianfranco Zola made his way into the commentary.
Did he?
Yeah.
We need to hunt
that was
down.
my reference point.
This is the greatest opportunity of all time missed.
Zola had got an almost identical goal against Norwich City when playing for Chelsea that Darren O'Sullivan scored that day.
Like 10 years previously.
Yeah, about that, yeah. And it was an amazing finish. Like that, I don't know
Do you
if
have
anyone...
photographic memory for goals? Do you remember?
Oh, well, the great goals. Like the Zola goal is one of the all-time great Premier League finishes. When the ball is fired in, he's at the front post, ball's fired in towards him, and he basically backheels it in the air, a volleyed backheel through his legs into the far corner, which is what Darren O'Sullivan did, because the ball was played behind him, and he couldn't contort his body in any other way other than to backheel it into the Limerick net.
The RTE commentator said, I think he meant it. Which kind of kills the moment. And also Darren O'Sullivan scored a great goal against Armagh in 2006 in that game that Donaghy famously scores as well in his breakthrough season, and he gets called Declan O'Sullivan twice while he's running through on goal. Which probably sums up, I would say, Darren would probably kind of associates with that a small bit, and probably Declan does as well. I'd say the two of them are sick of being called Declan or Darren, especially when the two of them were in camp together.
How long is it since we saw Darren at his best?
Well,
like when you think of Darren O'Sullivan at his most potent.
I think he was under
2011 was his best year.
See, and I think that's sad that that's 7 years ago.
But he was underused as well. There were definitely times when it looked like his form was coming back and his fitness was there, and he couldn't get in the team for whatever reason. Like he played. Look,
injuries didn't help.
It was meaningless. That Kildare game was completely meaningless, where they scored the 600, whatever the score was.
He was electric that day.
And that's the thing. Yeah. Like you think, stick him in the team. Give him build a way of getting him in space, as opposed to asking him to be the foraging half forward that everybody else has. Like,
yeah, it was 2 seasons ago he was particularly good. The year Kerry won the league, and then coming off the bench he made a huge impact. I was kind of pining for him to start that season. Like, I think it's unfair to say, it's 7 years since his peak. I think just because his best year was 7 years ago doesn't mean that he levelled off to a consistent level of being very, very good every year after that. And I think maybe in the last 2 seasons then he kind of knew himself it was kind of time to hang up the boots. But that's another one gone. I think Killian Young really the only one of the stalwarts of that team of the decade that are still around, the Kerry team.
The team of the decade?
Yeah, the 2000s.
That's a reach.
Team of the decade on screen.
That was a reach. They literally won the most All-Irelands in that decade.
As you can see, the team of the decade is
you're using numbers.
I've got the Tyrone lads.
You're basing it solely on All-Ireland medals.
There you go. Let's bring it.
All-Ireland medals.
Let's bring you some Stephen Hunt from last night. Just play the clip. It's Stephen Hunt talking about Ireland and Wales last night.
All-time talents.
Let's hear it. Darren, how are you?
Morning, Ger.
Did you get somebody to go to the game with last night?
I gave the tickets to my neighbour.
You didn't go.
I didn't go. I had no interest.
You're just a generous man.
No, I absolutely had no interest. There was no interest there. O'Neill's talked down the team for the best part of the last week, and there's just no appetite. He's managed to make people feel indifferent to the national team, and that's where the buck stops. I think that's the problem. It's if you are to make a change, which I assume a lot of the papers are suggesting this morning, it comes from the top down.
Would you not go along to listen to the music booming on the speakers, no? Well, I would say the thing with Ireland potentially losing support, I don't necessarily buy it. At least if you go to the game, you've got a bar right there, whereas if you're watching the game at home, you've got to go all the way to a shop for a bottle of vodka to drown your sorrows and try and heal the pain some bit.
Drink responsibly. There was 38,000 people there last night, and how many of them paid in? I'd say a large portion got their tickets for free. And one of the big things with O'Neill is, once again, I don't think there was a discernible plan, an offensive plan, a way to to grab a goal. This whole thing of let's go out there and try and nick a goal. It didn't make a whole heap of sense. And the idea that he still doesn't tell the players until they arrive whether or not they'll be playing. Like the Christie gamble paid off the last day, and the fact that he told Christie to be playing him out of position an hour before kick-off. Christie was a lad who's had a rough few weeks, who's got an awful lot of criticism at club level, probably playing with a little bit less confidence than he has. And the manager tells him an hour before kick-off because he has this weird... He's tormented about... When he was asked, why do you not tell the players if they're playing, he said, well, I was a club manager one time and I told a player he wasn't playing and he told a mate on the other team and they had my 11 up on the wall 2 days before kick-off. So he doesn't trust the players enough to tell them the lineup. That for me is bonkers.
Also said that not every player wants to be told 2 days before the game that they're starting because they might get too nervous. That's what he told Joe in his interview
he just doesn't trust them. Imagine you have a manager...
Neither argument stacks up.
Who doesn't trust you enough to tell you the information, who doesn't believe you're emotionally mature enough to deal with the information.
Well, just like I think it's a little bit of a distraction from the main issues, because like if Jose Mourinho's naming his team before a Champions League game, when does Marcus Rashford find out if he's in or out?
No, but there's the key difference being that whether or not he's in the 11, Marcus Rashford knows what his role is and what position he's going to play.
Well, I mean, come on, not always. Like sometimes he's playing.
Well, he's either going to be
Alexis Sanchez know?
He's going to be playing through the middle or on the left side of a front three. He's not going to pop up in centre midfield, Marcus Rashford.
Okay, so the Cyrus Christie playing centre mid is a bit of an outlier.
And he got away with it because Christie had a great game.
And maybe Cyrus Christie trained in that position in the build-up.
Is Myler injured?
I don't think so. No, he's playing in the Championship with
anyway,
Reading.
Darren, you've got a day job to go to, so.
Martin O'Neill, that's where we'll start. He remains defiant this morning. He's pledged to carry on as Ireland manager, the boys in green going down 1-0 to Wales in the Nations League, marking a third loss in 4 competitive games. Asked specifically if he planned to carry on, he replied, absolutely. A crowd of 38,000, a portion of whom received free tickets in an attempt to fill the stadium, booed the team and O'Neill off the pitch. O'Neill claims he didn't hear the boos, but we're sure they weren't for the team.
Oh, well, I don't know whether they were jeers or whether it was for the referee. I didn't hear them myself. All I do know is that the crowd stayed behind to cheer the players off the field. I thought that obviously a very, very strong last 25 minutes as well when we were a goal behind. But overall, positive things to take out of the game. And as I said, delighted with the endeavour that we showed. Endeavour alone is not enough. Obviously, we lack a little bit of quality. You know what? I'm not so sure that I've ever not asked questions about myself. You know, I really am not sure about that. I think I do. I think I've done that as a player, and I certainly have done that as a manager. And so, yeah, if you're asking about responsibility for it, I take responsibility for every kick that is made in that field by us. That is my job. And so that will not change.
Now, as bad as that was, there was some solace to be found on the Ireland Simpsons fans page. Take a look.
Oh, well, I don't know whether they were jeers or whether it was for the referee. I didn't hear them myself. All I do know is that the crowd stayed behind to cheer the players off the field.
Smithers, are they booing me?
No, they're saying Boo Earns. Boo Earns.
Are you saying boo or boo earns?
What a classic.
They were not saying boo earns. The Republic of Ireland under-21s ended their European Championship qualifying campaign with a 2-0 defeat away to Germany, a 4th defeat of the group by Noel King's side. The under-19s qualified, though, for the elite phase of their Euro qualifiers with a perfect record. They came from behind to beat the Netherlands 2-1 in Longford. Fantastic result for them. Around up with the rest of the Nations League results from last night. Germany's relegation to League B all but confirmed. Antoine Griezmann scored twice. France came from behind to beat the Germans 2-1 in Paris. That condemned them to back-to-back competitive losses for the first time since the year 2000. Ukraine sealed promotion. They continued their perfect start by beating the Czech Republic, while Gibraltar rounded off a memorable few days by beating Liechtenstein 2-1. That was their second consecutive competitive win. It came just days after their first competitive international win. Wonderful scenes. They defeated Armenia as well on Saturday. That ended a run of 22 defeats in a row.
In fairness, the European Nations Cup is brilliant. It is completely, I've had a complete turnaround. Results like that, Luxembourg doing well, it's almost as if pitting teams of similar standard against each other is a great idea.
And we're the only ones
of international soccer.
We're the only ones who could possibly go into a competition where you're seated the same as your opponents with an inferiority complex. We're literally the only country in the world who could do that.
Is Tom Mowen, manager of the under-19s, a candidate here to take over?
Should be.
Should be in the conversation.
I mean, that would be madness, normally, under normal circumstances. It'd be like, I had to kind of look up exactly who he was. He's from Fermanagh, played 7 seasons with Finn Harps before moving into coaching. Qualified as a coach while he was still playing, was involved with Sean McCaffrey, and then was the Ireland under-17 manager in 2012. So he's been there, been within the FAI setup. But like, aren't these the type of people who we should be grooming? Isn't that like, that's a career progression?
These are desperate times. Like, I mean, it's like wartime. Instead of food rationing, we've got coach rationing because we've got so bloody few of them that have actually been nurtured and have actually gone through the relevant processes. I think he has to be in the conversation. Like, they've done really well over the last
They've done exceptional. Yeah, they really have.
So, like, he's got to be in some sort of conversation. If there's, like, we're going to have talk now of like a think tank or something like that to sort of fix Irish football. And if that's the case, then someone like him needs to be involved.
It's a bad morning if you are a Liverpool fan and a Republic of Ireland fan, because Naby Keita became the latest player to add to their growing injury list. Sadio Mane taken to hospital ahead of Senegal's game against Sudan, having reportedly broken his thumb. The news came after both Mohamed Salah and Virgil van Dijk picked up injuries while on duty with Egypt and the Netherlands respectively. Liverpool returned to action on Saturday against Huddersfield. To further compound Jurgen Klopp's misery, Keita started for Guinea in their Africa Cup of Nations qualifier against Rwanda yesterday. The midfielder forced off with what's believed to be a thigh injury. Well, Shelbourne have begun the search for a new manager. It follows the club's decision not to renew Owen Heary's contract. Their promotion push ended with a penalty shootout defeat to Drogheda United. Martin Russell among the managers being linked with that vacancy. Heary told The Sun after his dismissal, with a weekly budget for players and staff of around €3,000, I think we've done well in the league and by winning 2 trophies, the Leinster Senior Cup, but they've decided they want to go in a different direction. Liam Buckley, the front-runner for the Sligo Rovers vacancy, the Bitter Red announced last night that they also would not be renewing their manager's contract. Ger Little will leave there. Sligo, safe from relegation, currently sit 8th in the SSE Electricity League. Well, finally, Gaelic Games and Ballyholland and Downpatrick have been barred from participating in the Down Senior Football Championship for next year. Disciplinary chiefs have taken a zero-tolerance approach after ugly scenes marred a match between the sides. Footage of a brawl involving fans and players spread across social media. The fight happened during a league meeting in Kilcoo. Both clubs have had individuals hit with lengthy suspensions. They are, though, likely to appeal some of the sanctions handed down.
Well, look, it's a good start. Hopefully they follow through.